blue light. Perfect. And then I'll hit record on this.
There we go. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight is the Meet the Candidates night for the Horsehead Central School District Board of Education elections, which are to be held next week on Tuesday, the 16th of May, from 7 to 9 throughout the day at the high school South Gymnasium. For all Horseheads residents who are eligible to vote, please see our newsletter that is in the mail or at your home at this point. I'm Tom Douglas, I'm the Superintendent of Schools. This is our annual event, and we are going to be moderated tonight by our Student Board of Education representatives, Ms. Tatiana Kopp, as well as Mr. Mario Ruggiero. They will also be administering the moderation of the forum, as well as keeping time with their wonderful signs that they have here. So as we get started tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we will start off with an introduction of the candidates. Our first candidate on the ballot is Mr. Asfar Azi Faruqi. He is not here tonight because of a work commitment. He sends his apologies, just unfortunately the dates could not align. In the second ballot is Mr. Brian Lynch, running for re-election. In the third ballot is Mr. Warren Conklin, running for re-election. In the fourth ballot is Ms. Katrina Unvarsky, who is running for her first election. And in the fifth ballot is Ms. Susan Unvarsky, who has been a former board member as well and running for election. And in our last ballot, sixth ballot, is Ms. Erin Chabon, who is also running for her first re-election, or first election. Ladies and gentlemen, this is about getting to know our candidates as well as getting ready for our upcoming election. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to our moderator, Ms. Tatiana Kopp.
Hello. You will each have 2 minutes for your opening statements, and we will start with Mr. Lynch whenever you are ready.
Thank you. I want to thank the students for hosting and organizing the Candidates Forum tonight. I'm a Horseheads grad. My wife and I moved back to Horseheads 34 years ago when we were ready to start our family. I'm currently finishing my 18th year on the school board, and I've seen a lot of changes over those years. When I first joined, school finances were very tight and expenses had been increasing. There was even discussion about kindergarten being halted because we needed to make some expense cuts. This one hit near and dear to my heart because my grandmother, Fern Lynch, was the person that started the kindergarten program in Horseheads back in the 1940s. In 2006, thankfully no changes were made to the program, and since then we've expanded to include the pre-K program in the schools. When I joined, the thought was that we needed to control expenses and make sure it was affordable to the community. I took a different approach to our financial decisions. While most of the board members were just looking at the expenses, I thought of the district as a business. In a business, you try to balance expenses and revenue. And we do have control over our revenue. The state gives us financial aid for every student in the district. And if we can attract more families and students to Horseheads, we can increase our revenue, add programs, add staff, and make the community even better and stronger. We attract families with our great culture in Horseheads. But when I first joined, we desperately needed to update our school buildings to give the community the best learning environment. Over the last few years, I've been part of the team that's provided the oversight for the 2 big building projects, and they've made a huge improvement in the school buildings. The community has supported the $200 million in building projects, and our tax rates actually dropped. I'm very proud that over the 18 years that I've been on the board, our tax rates actually dropped close to 20%, and no other school nearby can do that. I'm running for my 3rd term just to make sure we can get that 3rd and final project, to this next 3-year term to get my 3rd and final project passed. We need to keep improving the facilities to attract new residents to Horseheads. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lynch. We're going to move on to Mr. Conklin next. So Mr. Conklin, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. I would like to thank all those involved in setting up tonight's forum, as well as our 2 student moderators, Tatiana Kopp and Mario Ruggiero. I am originally from Brooklyn, New York. I attended college at Hobart and fell in love with upstate New York. I have been a resident of the Horseheads School District for over 40 years and am currently retired from the Horseheads District after a career in teaching and coaching that spanned 35 years. I am proud to say I am a Blue Raider. I have had the privilege and honor of serving the community as a Board of Education member for the past 12 years. During those years, I have served on many internal committees, which include policy, athletics and extracurricular activities, buildings and grounds, and finance. These experiences have given me an important insight into the framework and the interconnectedness of the Horsehead school system and the community. I firmly believe that our school district is our community's most important resource as well as its most important responsibility. Our school district is fortunate to have taxpayers who have demonstrated time and time again how important education is to them by their approval of our school district budgets and our district-wide spending plans. These enhancements have and will continue to provide our children with the necessary skills to be our future business and public leaders. My life's commitment has been given to education, and I would appreciate your support to remain in service to our school and to our community as a member of the Horsehead School Board. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Conklin. Next, we're moving on to Ms. Unvarsky. Ms. Unvarsky, whenever you are ready.
Oh, sorry. I thought that was my alarm. Hi, I'm Katrina Unvarsky, and I was born and raised in Horseheads, New York, and I attended Horseheads High School my entire life. I was an active member of the student council, starting in 7th grade when you could join it. I was the vice president of the class. I ran the magazine chairperson operation. I was the top seller for the magazine class. And I was just very involved. I played tennis, ran track, very, very involved with our school. And the thing that I can remember the most about Horseheads was how great it was. Our teachers were wonderful. There weren't students that ever felt like they were excluded. Everybody was this community, a community of togetherness, love, just always being a part of everything. So the reason I'm running for the board is because my children are now going to Horseheads, and when as somebody who's involved now, it seems like there's not quite as much involvement, and I don't know if I am feeling quite the same community that I was feeling when I was in school, by talking to other people in the community. And so really, like, my main focus is to just figure out a way to make Horseheads exactly what the experience was for me when I was here. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Unvarsky. Next, we're going to move on to Mrs. Unvarsky. Mrs. Unvarsky, whenever you are ready.
Okay, I guess I'm ready. I'm running for the school board again after I resigned in 2003. I was on the school board for 10 years, and I resigned to do a preschool program to be a site for the school district, and I could no longer be on the board and be the site for the UPK program. So I did that program for 16 years to 2019. We've had daycare in our home for 39 years, so we've never really lost touch with the community or what goes on, I believe. And I've also done the ski club for 30 years. I'm coming back. Our 4 children graduated from Horseheads, had a great education, were involved in musicals, sports, many activities. We were always running extracurricular activities. Now 4 of our grandchildren attend Horseheads. I just want to get back involved more and I feel that the board level is a good place to be involved. And I think we need to be more effective in our budgeting, even though when I was on the board previously, we had more students than we have now. I would just be honored to serve the board and serve the students and the staff and the community again by being a board member.
Thank you, Mrs. Unvarsky. Next, we're going to move on to Mrs. Chabon. Mrs. Chabon, whenever you're ready.
Good evening, everyone, and I would also like to thank our two student ambassadors tonight and say good luck to the rest of our candidates here with us tonight. My name is Erin Chavone. I grew up on Long Island, so I'm actually a transport into this region, but I came to this region in 1997, and I've actually lived here for just about 25 years now, longer than I lived on Long Island, so I do consider myself, in essence, to be a Horsehedian. I have worked in the district since 1998. I came as a secondary social studies teacher working here in this high school and taught global history and geography and criminal justice. I have lived in the district since 2006. I lived in Big Flats, and now we currently reside in Horseheads North. I've been an educator since 1997. Besides working here at Horseheads High School until 2009, I moved over to GSD BOCES where I held a number of roles there. Instructional technology specialist, virtual learning regional coordinator that spanned our whole GSD BOCES region, CTE and alternative education assistant principal and principal, and also the regional business and industry business and industry liaison for GSD BOCES. That's a mouthful. On top of that, I also worked in the capacity of being a Dignity for All Students Act trainer for teacher and administrator certifications. So I have a wide gamut of experiences within education, from being an educator in the district to an educator at the building and district levels. I also have two amazing children that one has gone through the Horseheads Central School District from beginning to end. She's now a pharmacy student in Binghamton. Well, that's it. Oh, that's time. I wasn't done. Yeah. That went quick. Okay.
Thank you all for your opening statements. Next, we're going to be moving on to questions, and you will have 1 minute to answer each question. Your first question is, why are you running for the school board, and what qualifications and/or experiences make you an ideal candidate for the Horseheads Board of Education? We are going to be starting with Mr. Conklin, so Mr. Conklin, whenever you're ready.
Well, I think as I said before, my whole life has been committed to education, so I understand a lot of the importance of the different programs that we have. I think I've been part of a group that has revitalized in terms of the building infrastructure. It had aged and it was time to upgrade, and I'd like to remain as part of that team to see that completed.
Thank you, Mr. Conklin. Next, we're going to be moving on to Ms. Unvarsky. Ms. Unvarsky, whenever you're ready.
Yeah, so, can you hear me? Am I here? Okay, sorry, there's a lot of feedback up here too. That's what I'm working. Anyway, so I am a massage therapist and an esthetician, and I own a business locally in Horseheads, 112 North Main Street, LLC. But before I did that, I was helping my sister down at her school, and I was actually a director down there. So for the past 7 years, I worked extremely hard, and I accredited her institution, doing an institution self-study and following all of the rules and regulations under NICEAD. So I have a really great understanding and background of policy, how it's written, how you can change it, how New York State says things are, and how things can be catered to serve your community in a good way. And I want to use that skill to help my community because I care a lot about it. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Ms. Unvarsky. We are going to be moving on to Mrs. Unvarsky next. Mrs. Unvarsky, whenever you're ready.
You have to remind me. Being an active parent and grandparent in the community, I think is a valuable asset. Also, being a former board member for 10 years, I was elected for 12, but I left after 10. I will be a voice in the community, and I hope to be elected again to be that voice for the students, community, and staff.
Thank you, Mrs. Unvarsky. Next, we're going to be moving on to Mrs. Chavone. Mrs. Chavone, whenever you're ready.
I feel that my background in education in a variety of different capacities has given me the ability to look at and really offer another layer to what the board is currently doing. I offer a unique perspective, especially for career technical education and the BOCES, and also for alternative education for our students. So with my background and my skill set, I think that I have something to offer in being able to offset the wonderful things that our district is already doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Chabon. Next, we're going to be moving on to Mr. Lynch. Mr. Lynch, whenever you're ready.
Yes, I'd like to continue the next 3 years to finish the building projects. I also want to make sure the board keeps attracting and the community and school keeps attracting new families to Horseheads. As I mentioned before, it's important to increase our revenues, keep our numbers up, and we're doing much better than most schools in upstate New York. My qualifications, I'm an industrial engineer by background, and we study things to become more efficient. And I've done that all my life, and I think I've kind of done that a lot on the board in the finance committee, as well as a lot of the regular board meetings. I have a strong business background from running my own business, and I want to make sure our finances stay very strong at the school.
Thank you, Mr. Lynch. We will now be moving on to our next question. The question is, as a member of the Board of Education, where would you believe the district should head during the next 5 years? Are there activities, programs, educational strategies that you would champion as a member of the board? This time we will be starting with Ms. Unvarsky. Ms. Unvarsky, whenever you are ready.
So for me, I think that when you're in a small school district, it's all about community, right? And as many programs that you can create for the students where they can interact with each other, even from a young age, you know, bringing high schoolers in to mentor some of the elementary school people. Making it so that if an art student wants to take multiple art classes and do music at the same time, that could be something you could look into. But really, I think that bringing community back and personal relationships outside of technology relationships would be a really great place to start. And I just want to do that. I just want to spread the love, because I had a lot of it when I was here. Thank you.
My apologies. Thank you, Ms. Unvarsky. We will now be moving on to Mrs. Unvarsky. Mrs. Unvarsky, whenever you are ready.
I think it would be good to, I don't know all the programs they have in place now for the students. I know some of them. I think it would be great to brainstorm with parents and staff on new ideas that would work with children. Sometimes the children who maybe struggle that we don't reach out to a lot. Your gifted child or your child who wants to do sports, they have activities they can go to, but I think it would be a wonderful thing to include everyone, so everyone has something that they could do. And it'd be great to have parents volunteer more than they do now.
Thank you, Mrs. Unvarsky. Next, we'll be moving on to Mrs. Chabon. Mrs. Chabon, whenever you are ready.
Thank you. The state has brought down a mandate for all schools to be online ready for when students may have to learn online again. And because of my background and knowledge in that, I would like to be a use and implement the knowledge that I have to help support the decisions and the policies that are made here in the district. On top of that, I also echo what my other candidates have shared too. I believe that we need to get our students more involved in the schools, and I believe that a way to do that is actually through mentorship programs and establishing mentorship programs with our local businesses and industries to begin setting up relationships and possible internships so students can see a little bit of what's out there, see if they're interested, and take some classes here that may reflect some of those interests. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Chabon. Next, we will be moving on to Mr. Lynch. Mr. Lynch, whenever you are ready.
I think we should continue to look at all the programs and the educational programs over the next couple of years. We've been a leader in the Unified Sports Program here in the area, and I think we should continue looking at programs like that. It's an amazing program. Girls Flag Football is another one that the board has worked on to get started the last few years. I'm very supportive of the music and arts too. I'd love to see us continue to expand those programs too. I think it's vital to give all the kids as many opportunities as possible. The community, as some of the other members have mentioned, is super important to keep that really vital. As far as the educational programs, I've pushed over the years that we continue or need to continue looking at all the neighboring schools, be it Ithaca, Vestal, some of the Rochester schools, some of the higher, the schools that are doing it exceedingly well, and really kind of make sure that we are maintaining our standards and hopefully surpassing those standards too.
Thank you, Mr. Lynch. Next, we'll be moving on to Mr. Conklin. Mr. Conklin, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. I think, as Mr. Lynch said and everybody else on the panel, we continue with the programs that we've had. I think the programs have been successful. I think we need to enhance our critical thinking in the area of curriculum, because students have to learn to adapt, because what they're learning now, the jobs 15 years from now, we don't even know what they're going to be. When I graduated high school, teachers had a piece of chalk and there was no thing called a computer, no Google machine, none of those things. So we need to enhance the critical thinking so that they can adapt to whatever their future is going to be.
Thank you, Mr. Conklin. We will now be moving on to our next question. The question is, please identify and explain one issue or area in the recent past where you think the board has done well. We will be starting with Mrs. Unvarsky. So, Mrs. Unvarsky, whenever you are ready.
Am I on? Okay. I think during the pandemic, the board did a good job when they had many obstacles with getting the children connected and doing online learning, which was very difficult for a lot of the students. And I think the board had many challenges with people wanting their kids back in school. And I think that was a difficult time, but they tried to do their best with what was handed to them, like we all did. Try to do our best with that, so.
Thank you, Mrs. Unvarsky. Next, we will be moving on to Mrs. Chavone. Mrs. Chavone, whenever you are ready.
Thank you. One of the things that was done incredibly well during the pandemic was feeding our students. And the organization and the orchestration that went into that, to the busing routes, to the food being delivered to the students, that they had food to sustain them over, unbelievable. The man hours and the manpower that went into that, phenomenal. So just really, really impressed with that. Also, online learning isn't easy. And I watched this district pull off in a very short amount of time what took me traditionally a couple of years to train our teachers in. People don't realize that perspective of it, but I want to share that perspective of it, that this district did an amazing job in a short amount of time. Was it perfect? Nothing's perfect.
Thank you, Mrs. Chavone. We will now be moving on to Mr. Lynch. Mr. Lynch, whenever you're ready.
I would agree with the other two candidates. The pandemic, was super challenging. There were so many decisions that need to be made. They've mentioned them both very well. We have 4,000 students. So to teach 4,000 students, various grade levels, and get out the whole staff up and running too, it's just an insurmountable task. And I think overall, the board and the district did a very good job given the circumstances.
Thank you, Mr. Lynch. We will now be moving on to Mr. Conklin. Mr. Conklin, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. I concur with all the comments with the pandemic. I think the teachers pulled a rabbit out of the hat. I mean, whether you were a 25-year veteran or a first-year teacher, you were all rookies with what came down. The cleaning staff did a tremendous job making the facilities ready and open. I also think we did a great job in expanding extracurricular opportunities for students. And then I think the building program has also been a great boost for the district.
Thank you, Mr. Conklin. We will now be moving on to Ms. Unvarsky. Ms. Unvarsky, whenever you're ready.
Yeah, the one area that I do think was something that the board did do well was the free lunches, definitely. That was a great thing during the pandemic, and that continued for the couple of years after. And I know that some other school districts have been able to keep those free lunches for the parents in the community, and I think that would be really great if our board could also find a way to do that again. I've heard a lot of parents talk about how they loved it so much and they thought that was so wonderful that the board was able to do that for their kids. So I would love to see that again, because it was great, especially for me. I love free school lunch.
Thank you, Ms. Unvarsky. We will now be moving on to our next question. The question is, please identify and explain one issue or area in the recent past you think the board should have handled differently, and explain what you would have done differently. We will be starting with Mrs. Chabon. Mrs. Chabon, whenever you're ready.
So to come back to online learning, I know I just said it was a tremendous effort and wonderful. And I do agree with that still. However, I think that there could have been modifications made to specifically the middle school, if I'm going to be direct. Students taking 9 classes, especially in that age grouping, all online was rough. Students learning the system, students being able to engage well in those, and then be able to learn at the same time was hard. What I changed that I would have implemented was actually moving the middle school, if possible, to a block and having students cut down on the amount of classes that they were taking in the sections, and then be able to spread that out. So that we're still taking the same amount of classes, but just through the whole year instead.
Thank you, Mrs. Chabon. We will now be moving on to Mr. Lynch. Mr. Lynch, whenever you're ready.
I think one of the things the board is trying to do a little bit differently is the way we communicate with the community. We do have our monthly board meetings, but the board is also trying to. We now have a new committee, the Community Engagement Committee, that is looking at ways to get information, vital information, relevant topics, timely topics to the community. We had one a few months ago regarding safety and school safety, and we are looking at setting up the next one for the fall. So I think one of the things we're trying to do is make sure we engage the community, and I'm glad we're moving forward with that.
Thank you, Mr. Lynch. We will now be moving on to Mr. Conklin. Mr. Conklin, whenever you're ready.
Well, I was going to say exactly what Mr. Lynch said, that engagement with the community is very challenging. So any way we can get more communication with the community. I also thought we did a good thing to meet a need where after our board visits to the buildings, we meet with staff and hear their concerns, and I think that was an important step forward for us to hear information from the people that are working.
Thank you, Mr. Conklin. We will now be moving on to Ms. Unvarsky. Ms. Unvarsky, whenever you're ready.
So, as a member of the community and not a board member yet, I think that communication is definitely something that the board could improve upon. I think that, most of the people are connected to their devices. They sometimes read a newsletter, but sometimes they don't. I think there was more people who showed up for the capital project votes in the beginning. I think that was like a 1,300 and some person vote yes to like a 400 and something vote no for the initial projects. But in that project, it talked about adding a new boiler to Center Street. But then in the second part of the same project, it's all of a sudden Center Street's closed. And then you have half of the turnout for that vote. So I think a lot of members in the community don't realize that some of these things are happening. And now that they are happening, they're very taken aback and kind of upset about it. And I think that definitely falls under the communication that the board needs to improve upon.
Thank you, Ms. Unvarsky. We will now be moving on to Mrs. Unvarsky. Mrs. Unvarsky, whenever you're ready.
I think one thing that's a current hot topic is making the no-cut policy for the sports teams. Maybe they did, but the board should have met with the coaches, parents, students to gather their input before changing something that has worked for many, many years. I believe we can offer intramural programs. All athletes and children grow at different times, and think that that was something that should have been handled differently. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Unvarsky. I will now be passing it off to my fellow moderator, Mario Ruggiero, for the next set of questions.
For question number 5, we will be starting with Mr. Lynch. Describe your view of the role of a school board member as well as the relationship between the board and the superintendent. What is the ideal relationship between the two? Whenever you're ready.
The role of the board is to make sure we oversee all the policies in the district. The other important things we do, obviously, is to maintain the safety of all the students. And another vital thing that we would need to do from time to time is to hire the superintendent. The superintendent is somebody the board hires, and then the superintendent oversees the district. So when we meet as a group of 9, each individual person is just one person. We can't control the board, we can't dictate changes. It requires a majority in any vote we have. And our group meets monthly to make sure all the policies are proper and address any pressing issues in the district.
Thank you, Mr. Lynch. Mr. Conklin, you're up next, whenever you're ready.
I think the role of a board member is to be part of a team that oversees the day-to-day operation, maybe not the day-to-day operations, but the policies that oversee what goes on in the school district. And then I think if you don't agree as a board member, then it's your obligation to speak up at the meetings and make your point known, and then it's up to the board to vote as they see fit.
Thank you, Mr. Conklin. Ms. Zimbarski, whenever you're ready.
So the role of a board member is to write policy. The board member is elected by the community, and so it is important for the board member to write the policies based on the wants and the needs of the community that it is serving. It is not so much my opinion, but it is what is the opinion of the community? What is the opinion of the students and the teachers that are serving the community? And then together, the 9 people discuss who they've communicated with, how do we create this policy to best serve our community, and then the board oversees the superintendent. The superintendent manages all of the schools, and it's like implementing the policy. It's their job to deliver the policy, This is our policy on how things get fixed. This is how we've handled it. Just making sure that everything's running smoothly. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Zimbarski.
The Board of Education are educational leaders. We determine the policies that govern the operation of the school district. We hire the superintendent, and we work with the superintendent to make sure the policies and procedures are followed. We also make a budget. We should set goals, and we should measure our goals. We also represent the community. They are the ones who elected us, and we need to listen to our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Finally, Mrs. Chabot.
Again, I echo what our other candidates have shared about policy making. Policy, and all of us on the board, we're pieces of a puzzle, right? And we all have a myriad of strengths and weaknesses. And we come together to share out information, to come to consensus, to create, sustain, or alter policy as we see fit for our district. The relationship that we have with the superintendent should be one of transparency, honesty, integrity, asking a lot of questions, seeking out answers from all of our stakeholders, students, faculty, staff, teachers, community members, to bring that information back to us as a holistic team to make the best decisions for our district possible.
Thank you. Next question. How are you educating yourself on the issues that are most important to the district and school community? Mr. Conklin, whenever you're ready.
Well, I think I generally do a lot of reading on topics that come up. Go to various educational journals or just general current events as to what's going on. We just went through the state budget, so I would look up online all the different proposals that were going on in the state budget. And then I would contact representatives based on what I believe was good or bad in those state budgets.
Thank you. Ms. Mbarski, whenever you're ready.
Can you repeat that question?
Yes. How are you educating yourself on the issues that are most important to the district and school community?
So the way that I educate myself on issues in the community is by talking to people in the community. I own a business in the community, and I see a lot of people going to baseball games and hockey and the grocery store, and just being from here my whole life, I know a lot of people, and so I talk to them. What's important to you? You know, going to different school events and different school functions and just asking the community, like, talking to people. That's what community is. Interacting with those people. What's important to you? What are you happy with? What are you upset about? What would you like to see done? What things do you think are wonderful? And that's how I educate myself, is by hanging out with people.
Thank you. Mrs. Mbarski.
Well, we do the same things. I talk and I listen to staff and community. I talk with students. I have students at my house every day after school. They might be young, but they talk. I listen to the community that elects us. I go to lacrosse games, I go to school musicals, I go to basketball games. I'm out in the community. I have a ski club bus, and I have kids on my bus, and they talk to me, or I pick on them. So it's very important that you educate yourself. Not only educate, but listen to your community and the peers who put you in this office.
Thank you. Mrs. Chabot, whenever you're ready.
I have a variety of different individuals that I can talk to. I have my son, who's a current high school student. I have my husband, who's a current teacher. I have other family members that live and work in the community and in the schools here, so I get feedback from them as well. I also listen to my fellow colleagues, my educational colleagues, and the experiences that they're having, what they're going through as they're teaching students, as they are raising their families in the communities. Also by reading the local news. You'll learn a lot by reading the local news and seeing what's going on in our region. And then also I'm connected through NICED also, and get communication pushdowns from at the state level, letting us know what initiatives are being pushed out.
Thank you. Mr. Lynch.
I think we do need to stay in touch with the community, talk to your neighbors, talk to your family members that may live, in the area. The other very important thing that we think we need to keep track of, and we do, is to watch things that are happening around the state, the rest of the state, and the nation. A lot of times in a situation or an issue may come up in other parts of the country, and sooner or later they may find its way to Horsehead. So if we're able to head that off before anything major happens, then that helps us out too.
Thank you. Our next question. How would you blend/balance decision-making on the Board of Education in relation to your own views, the needs of the community, and/or state and federal mandates and initiatives?
Repeat that first part.
How would you blend/balance decision-making on the Board of Education in relation to your own views, the needs of the community, and/or state and federal mandates and initiatives?
So when you're elected to the Board of Education, it's not about me. It's about the community and what are their views and what do they want to have done. Being a public servant is just that. You serve the public. So while I have my own opinions that I know many people share with me, because things that are important to me are community, caring, building up relationships with each other, developing a strong sense of self, with kids, making themselves feel really good self-esteem, things like that. So the way I blend those things is I take my personal view out and I look at what the community is looking for and how it's going to serve the kids and the staff and the taxpayers the best. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Zimbarski. How would you blend or balance decision-making on the Board of Education in relation to your own views, the needs of the community, and/or state and federal mandates and initiatives?
Let's see. Initiatives may come down from at the national level, but I think you have to look at the community and where the community is at. And I'm one of 9, and I think that we have to do what's best for the community. And we can't always have our own opinion completely in there. We have to look at all of it and make the decision that's best, even if it's being sent down to from a national standpoint, how we can balance doing that.
Thank you. Mrs. Chabot.
As was already stated, you are a public servant. So even though you may have personal opinions about something, those may be trumped by federal law, by federal initiatives, by national, by state law and initiatives. But one thing that I've learned through my experience is that even though as these initiatives come, there are room to massage them. There are room to have some flexibility within those mandates for things that local districts can and cannot do. That can help us to get some of the public opinion in there and be able to create, yes, we do have this initiative, but we can take X, Y, and Z steps to make it fit into our community.
Thank you. Mr. Lynch.
Working within the mandates is certainly a struggle at times. What's nice about the board, we do have 9 board members. There's usually a diverse background of the board members, which is excellent. It really provides a good balance in looking at many different topics that come in front of the board. So I think as we have discussions and look at different topics and everything, you know, it could be for the kids, it could be for the staff, it could be for the safety of the, you know, the community. We're going to take that all in mind when we move forward and make decisions. It's challenging, but it's nice to have the diversity that we could have on the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Conklin.
So again, you're a public servant, so you have to supplant your own personal views to what the community, staff, students may need. You may not always get a choice when it's mandates from the state or the federal government, but as Ms. Chabot said, there's generally areas where you can have some leeway, and within those areas of leeway, you have the opportunity to do what you believe is best for the students, the staff, and the community.
Thank you. Our final question, if elected, during budget development, how would you balance the educational needs of students with a potential impact on taxes? Mrs. Zimbarski?
When we look at the budget, we have to look at it as a whole, and the state hasn't been good at getting the budget done to do that, but I think we have to look at where all the spending is, but make sure we're not affecting our students when we do that. And it's a tough thing to do. I mean, this year the budget, I believe, went up about $5 million. And when I sat on the school board 20 years ago, I think our budget might have been in the 70 millions. Now it's at 95 million. So it's a tough thing to balance, but I think we have to look at budget things all through the year, what's working and what's not working.
Thank you. Mrs. Chabot?
I think when we're talking about the budget, we need to have a more broad understanding of what our district needs. We are not just looking at the individual year, we are looking to sustain for the future as well. Right now we are going through these large building projects. We have needed these large building projects for quite a while in order to move forward to give our students the facilities and the equipment that they need as we move forward in time, right? So how do we maintain those? How do we take initiatives for new busing that's going to be needed? So we take a look at everything that's there, we start planning and chunking away for the future, and it all impacts the budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lynch?
Whenever we're looking at the budget, there's a lot of challenges. I think one of the things we need to do is be creative. Maybe we look at sharing resources with BOCES. Maybe we look at things that might not be as expensive as other things. Maybe we can add more extracurricular programs, which are great opportunities for the kids to get involved. And maybe it's not adding that much to the budget line. So I think it's important that we move forward. I think it's important that the district continues to lobby for as much considerations from the state as possible. The tax cap has certainly been a challenging issue lately, and it'd be nice if they loosen that a little bit during these challenging, inflationary times. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Conklin, whenever you're ready.
We just went through the budget process, and I believe we try to make it as open as possible. We have a wide diversity of opinion, and people get to propose what they think is important to the community, and compromises are made along the way. And I think the process has worked. I think not everybody always gets what they want, but I think the community gets the best possible product for their children.
Thank you. Yes. If elected during budget development, how would you balance the educational needs of students with a potential impact on taxes?
So it's really important that we think about our taxpayers. As a business owner, a lot of people don't think about their school taxes because a lot of that's rolled into escrow. But long term, if you have very high taxes, it negatively impacts your community and people trying to move to your community and people being able to buy in your community. What happens is you get a lot of renters and those people don't stay. So it should never be cuts to what students need. You can get creative, you can ask for volunteers. How do you make sure that you don't take away from the students, because those are the people that nothing should ever be taken from. Those are the people who we're trying to help develop. That's the whole point of your public school system, right? Teachers and students. So I wouldn't take away from there, but if there's other things, if we have to put a big capital project on hold because something needs to go to a student in a program that they need to develop a stronger sense of self, I think that's important. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now be handing it back off to Tati to ask any questions asked by the audience and commence. Never mind. With a rate of over $2,800 per student in federal COVID refineries, what is the district doing to bring the students competitive with other New York State school districts? Only 40% are currently proficient. Mrs. Chabot.
You're going to have to repeat that.
With a rate of over $2,800 per student in federal COVID relief monies, what is the district doing to bring the students competitive with other New York State school districts? Only 40% are currently proficient.
Okay, that's a great question. I think what we should do, especially for those that just created the budget, is to go back to those that are asking that question and really take a look at the budget slide decks that are online at the budget on the school district website, and to see how all of the monies are being appropriated. I can't sit here directly right now and answer that question with 100% accuracy without having numbers in front of me. But I would say take a dig into some of those slide decks, see where that money is going, and then come to our board meetings and ask us questions.
Thank you. Mr. Lynch.
When the federal money was distributed to the various schools, one of the requirements was to make sure that the schools met with the districts, or met with the community actually, to get input on how to spend the money. So the district did move forward, did meet and sent out a survey, received many hundred responses, I believe over 1,000 responses. And that helped us to decide how to choose to allocate those funds. I believe some were used for computers, I believe some were used for teaching assistants in the classrooms, and there were a number of other things that were identified by the community that we've tried to allocate those funds for.
Mr. Conklin?
So I would concur with Mr. Lynch, but I would add that in the last budget cycle, we added 2 RTI teachers, and one of those teachers came from those funds. So that's to address learning loss or whatever other in vocabulary is there. So we're addressing and trying to see that the scores improve.
Thank you. Ms. Zabarski?
I don't have an answer to this question because I am not a current board member and I wasn't a part of making the decisions for where the money was going. I did visit the CARES Act portion on the website, and I saw where the people had been surveyed on where they wanted the money to go, and it was a little confusing to me, the bottom portion of it. While 53% of the people asked for it to go to mental health services and tutoring for the children, when I went down and read the itemized boxes, I saw $1.65 million going to secondary outdoor classroom space, and then another $700,000 going to primary outdoor classroom space. And maybe those classroom spaces are making our students competitive. I just don't know where those classroom spaces are.
Thank you. Mrs. Zabarski?
And I don't know in the budget, I know that they added a curriculum person this year, but if our students are only 40% proficient, that is not good. And we should definitely be having support for those students to bring that up. And maybe we would have to go back and revisit the budget and some of those line items and put in some extra staff for students. And it could be already in the budget, but I don't know because I'm not on the board at this point.
Thank you. I would now like to invite any candidates to make a closing statement, starting with Mr. Lynch. You have 2 minutes. 1 minute, my apologies. Mr. Chabot.
Thanks, Mario. In closing, I'd just like to say that this community and this school district are very important to me. It is the heartbeat of our family. We're here, we work here, we live here, and our students attend. And I just felt such a pull to become a candidate for the Board of Education, just because I want to be that servant leader who supports and shares out my knowledge with the board so that we can help to make decisions. That is my main impetus for running. That is my main desire for running, is just to utilize the skills and the knowledge that I have to support the community that I love. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Zabarski?
Thank you, Mario and Taka, for doing this. Thank you for the people who came to watch tonight and who are watching online. I love this community and I want what is best for the student and staff. Please remember to vote on May 16th from 7 to 9. Vote for 3 candidates. I hope to be elected next week to be a voice for our students, staff, and community. Please feel free to contact me with any concerns you have. I feel serving on the board for 10 years in the past is a positive one for me and the community. And also on May 16th, you will have a chance to vote on the district image in the same area, but not at the same place, I guess. But please remember to take the time and vote. That's how your voice is heard, by voting. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Zabarski?
In closing, I just want to say that I am a people person, and I love to take care of people. It's what I do for a living. I sit with somebody, I listen to them, and I want to find ways to help them. And I care a lot about students, as I'm on the Center Street PTO, and I was a former school bus driver. I care a lot about these kids. A lot of these kids may not be coming from places where they're getting everything that they need, and I think it's important for us to step up and help them be that voice and to help them grow and learn, because I grew up here, I love it here, and I know what Horseheads produced in the past, and I know that we're very much capable of it now. And I just want to be a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Conklin.
I'd like to thank everyone who organized this night, all of the people that came out and showed interest in the education in our community, and any residents who are watching online. I hope people support the budget. I hope you support the propositions. As I said in my opening, I think education is our most important responsibility. And as a 40-year resident of this community, it's just been an honor and a privilege to serve both as an employee and as a member of the board.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Lynch.
In closing, if elected, for the last 18 years, I've tried to make all of my choices, very fair while I've been on the board. I try to see every side of every situation we're looking at. I believe I've calculated I could have attended over 270 meetings over the time. I think I've missed 2, so if you elect me, I will be at the board meetings. The other thing I wanted to mention, my whole family feels education is super important. My wife works for BOCES. She helps the kids make career choices. I have 3 daughters. One's a college professor. One's an occupational therapist in a nearby elementary school. My youngest is finishing up college, and she hopes to be a fax teacher. So I would love to serve another 3 years on the school board, and I want to thank the students for hosting this event tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you all, and I'll now give it back to Dr. Douglas to finish this up.
Thank you, Mario. Thank you, Tatiana. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for our moderator. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to commend all the candidates. I've been to many of these over the course of my 30 years in administration and stuff. You guys hit the timing remark. We usually allow for an hour, 20 minute. You guys did a perfect job, and I think that's because of you guys asking questions and the preparation by everybody. So thank you all for doing that. On behalf of the community, I want to repeat some of the things that were said in regards to our upcoming vote. It is important for people to come out and vote. No matter what, that's the biggest participation that we can ever ask in our community. Most importantly, a newsletter has been sent home like is required each year, and that should be in your mailbox. If not, you can go onto our website, and it is also available there. In addition, as was mentioned, that is the day for the budget vote on May 16th from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. in the South Gymnasium for the Horsehead Central School District budget, as well as selecting 3 candidates for next year's Board of Education for 3-year terms. In addition, there is a proposition for our annual bus purchase as we go through our transportation department for safety and security, but also, as was mentioned, in the separate area, once you vote, or if you are not voting but you want to come out and vote on the image selection for the district, that is also on the website. There are 3 images, and if you are an alumni, a resident, staff member that's a resident, and an adult, that is where you vote, in the MMC from 7 a.m. until 9 p.m. All students will be weighing in right on the beginning of the day in their individual buildings in their first period classes, so that it will be a district-wide vote, and that image result will not be revealed that night, but at the June Board of Education meeting. So at this point, ladies and gentlemen, we are ready to move forward to our annual meeting. We want to thank all that have come out. I want to thank our candidates tonight for coming out and answering questions, and it is up to the community at this point. So as your superintendent, on behalf of my administration, our Board of Education, our candidates, and everyone who hears tonight, thank you for listening and becoming the best informed people that we can have in Horseheads. Have a good night.